Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Starheart Astrology. And tonight I am going to talk about the total solar eclipse. Happens at 23 degrees of Sagittarius on December 14th. So we are already in eclipse season. The first eclipse was on November 30th. It was a Gemini full moon lunar eclipse that happened at 8 degrees. And that eclipse, as a full moon, straddled the polarity of Sagittarius and Gemini. And so it kind of held the tension between the two houses and the two signs that we are experiencing eclipses in now. And so it kind of, right, that was kind of the point of maximum tension between those two signs. So one way to look at the role that the transiting nodes, so the North Node and the South Node, as they move through Gemini and Sagittarius, one way to look at how they will affect your chart is to just feel out, suss out kind of how those two houses and those two signs are feeling for you right now. And it can even be good to journal about this and look back on it later, because what is happening, especially with these two signs that really have a lot to do with belief and the stories we tell ourselves, both about the world and the people around us, is that they are due for a change, and they will change over the next year that we have eclipses in these signs. So by whole sign houses and otherwise, they will be in opposite spaces. So I'll speak a little bit from my experience just as an example, and use my own chart as an example. And if you have examples, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. So I am an Aquarius rising. So that means I have Sagittarius in my 11th house of friendship and community, and I have Gemini in my 5th house of children and creativity and playfulness. And so these eclipses light up those houses. Now we have the North Node moving through my 5th house. And so that is making me hungry for more in that area of my chart. So I've recently had a child, so I am spending a lot more time, kind of on the floor of my house in playfulness. Also at home with my child. I'm less able to kind of engage with community, although for obvious reasons. My Sagittarius house is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter has been in its fall, and so all the Aquarius risings have had the ruler of their house of community and connection with community in the 12th house of their isolation. And now obviously everybody has been isolating, or hopefully has been isolating this year. But there's really, it's hit Aquarius risings particularly hard with Jupiter's position and the power that Jupiter has. So the South Node is moving through my 11th house of friendship. And so what I am feeling and what is actually happening is clearing out a lot of old stories that I have collected about friendships and how I connect with people and how those go. And so it's a powerful time to kind of cleanse yourself of the stories that do not empower you anymore. So Sagittarius is an empowered sign. It's ruled by Jupiter, the greater benefic. And so it's especially related to this feeling of empowerment and expansion, and whether you can kind of meet new challenges as you find them, or whether you are weighed down by some of the more negative sides of Sagittarius, which is creed and dogma that's really confining and can be quite exclusionary. And so I want you to, take some time to think about what parts of yourself are being excluded by current belief systems about whichever house you have these falling in. So in the first house, that can be about yourself. In the second house, which would be true for Scorpio risings, that's going to be about your worthiness as related to your connection to resources. If you are a Libra rising, it's going to have to do with your communication. If you are a Virgo rising, that's going to have to do with your home, your foundation, your parents, where you feel safe in privacy. If you are a Leo rising, that's going to have to do with your fifth house of playfulness, of self-expression, of risk-taking. If you are a Cancer rising, that is going to be in your sixth house of employment, of service, of illness and injury, but also how we maintain the health and vitality of our bodies. If you are a Gemini rising, that will be in your seventh house of partnerships. So that's going to have to do with your relationships. If you are a Taurus rising, that is in your eighth house of deep intimacy and the taboo nature of reality. If you are a Aries rising, that will be in your ninth house of beliefs, of things that you learn through conscious effort, and of your guiding principles. If you are a Pisces rising, that will be in your 10th house of your life's work, where you are most on stage and you kind of have the highest ambitions of your worldly life. So that has to, it can have to do with career, but life's work is not necessarily career. If you are an Aquarius rising, it will happen in your 11th house of friendship. And if you are a Capricorn rising, it will happen in the 12th house of solitude and self-undoing. So that can come with certain psychological insights that kind of break the surface of the water in your life, as triggered by the eclipses. So the eclipse that happens on Monday, the 14th, and that eclipse happens at 9:16 a.m. where I am in Mountain Standard Time, so you can just kind of adjust that to where you are. That eclipse is a solar eclipse on the south node. So we have the sun goes out on the south node. And what I think we can expect from this is to really see these stories come to life. The sun will be darkened by the moon, and what will come to light and come to life are these old, worn-out stories in the sign of Sagittarius and the house of Sagittarius. What also may come is this feeling of starvation. And I mean a metaphorical starvation, hopefully. And this feeling that that what is before you is not what you need. And what I mean by that is it can be a moment where you kind of, where you finally admit to yourself that you've been walking in circles. You finally admit that you're lost. You finally admit that either you need to turn around and go back the way you came, or maybe you need to ask for directions, or maybe something, but you've kind of come to the end of the resources that you already have. And you can take stock of what you actually need. So a way to kind of hold space for whatever lessons or whatever truths may bubble up during this eclipse is that they are giving you the lay of the land and stuff that you have not been able to see clearly in terms of what you have now and what you actually need. And I don't necessarily mean need materially, but what would actually be the most appropriate next step for you to take moving forward in your life, and not these ones where we labor over the decision, right? So this is not about deciding on what is the right best thing. The moment of clarity, which is hopefully offered here, is that kind of hunger where you recognize exactly what you're hungry for. And that's what a South Node eclipse can offer. It is a space to learn about the various pockets of emptiness in ourselves and what we need to deal with them or to live with them or to cultivate to fill them, right? We can respond to emptinesses in lots of ways, and emptiness plays a really important role in our life, though it can be frustrating. Right? Emptiness is the void that creates hunger, that motivates us to move forward onto new things. Emptiness is the transition between things and the spaciousness we give ourselves to come down from one activity before we begin the next. Emptiness is a mirror where we can see ourselves in brief glimpses outside of the process and the busyness all around us. Emptiness is a space that we can sit in and review our failures and how they call for a deeper, more empowered version of ourselves. And hopefully that moment sparks 6 months of moving forward on this kind of quest, not to fill the emptiness, but whatever the emptiness is asked of you, to respond to that in kind. I had a professor in graduate school once talking about how to help people with mental health. That was my graduate degree, and I have a master's in counseling psychology. And this professor said, support precedes change. And I found that so powerful because there's so many ways and in so many instances that we're asking ourselves to change, and we're asking our partners to change, we're asking our families to change, we're asking the world around us to change without asking what support would we need to change. So, if I want my child to have a different behavior, or I want my partner to respond to me differently, how can I support them? What kind of support can I offer to help kind of buttress that behavior or to make that behavior easy for them? My father said once that we need to begin by nurturing people that we want to nurture us. And I think that all of this relates to our relationship with ourself. So if we want a healthy, robust self that nurtures us and supports our life, how do we support that self? If we want our lives to change, and so we do that by us changing, how can we gather those supports to us, whether they come from inside of us and believing in ourselves in a way that we haven't, whether they come from outside of us, asking for help from other people, or organizing our resources to support us, participating in our communities in a new way that feeds something. Right? So how can we notice what support is needed? And just by beholding that space and kind of meditating on that space of what support is needed, things begin to change, because everything inside of us and everything around us is dynamic. When things are static, it's because we're not looking at them. We're not participating with them. So even just noticing internal dynamics shifts them. And sometimes that shift is letting them go. This is the South Node. It's about release. So I guess that is kind of the opposite correlate, which is, right, in addition to noticing where you need support, where do you have excess stuff that is not really supporting you anymore? All of these stories about yourself and the way that you had to be, they served some purpose at one point. And so we can honor them because they allowed you to survive parts of your life or to make it through different parts of your life. But if they're not serving you anymore, take them to the secondhand store. Maybe somebody else needs them, or bury them in the compost pile. But don't keep all of your file boxes of old stories about yourself in your mind. They take up too much space. They're blocking the windows. So I think that's what this eclipse offers in terms of changing our qualitative experience of time over the next 6 months, and offering, these kind of embedded gems in the world around us. So, if you just start kind of looking for signs in your life of things that are ready to go, or emptinesses that are ready to be filled, that's kind of a daily way to invite new growth into life. We have to make space for it. And part of making space for it is getting rid of the stuff that doesn't need to be there. And part of making space for it is noticing where things would fit very nicely. So that when we get to the solar eclipse on the North Node, which will happen, I believe, May 26th. Yes. Then, oh no, wait. The solar eclipse on the North Node happens on June 10th. We have a lunar eclipse on May 26th. Once we have that solar eclipse on the North Node, we can start gathering that material to us. Or at least if it shows up, we know where to put it and we've cleared space for it. And that, the effect can last all of the 6 months. It's changing the quality of time. But also, the effect of the eclipse in some ways lasts 2 weeks, and the eclipse kind of changes the the underlying tone of time for the next 2 weeks until we have a Cancer full moon on December 29th, which will also bring us out of eclipse season, and be the first uneclipsed Cancer full moon in 2 years. So we get kind of like that energy has been reorganized. So the next 2 weeks are really big. A lot of big things happen, right? We have this eclipse, we have Saturn changing signs, and we have Jupiter changing signs, and we have the conjunction of the two of them. So really kind of some very big headlines of the astrology of 2020 happen on the tails of this eclipse. And so this eclipse can represent kind of, this eclipse can be this moment of really looking into the abyss, I think. But very quickly, the world around us changes. And when we're dealing with these outer planets, they are more about the context around us than they're not quite as personal. And so there's a way in which we may be looking down at something quite disturbing, but then the world changes around us and suddenly the context is different, and then what we're looking at might not seem so dire, if it seems dire at all. So I'll pull up the chart of the eclipse. Here we have it. This is set for the exact moment of the eclipse. The angles, the ascendant, the midheaven, descendant, etc., are all set for my time zone and my location, but the planets and their relationship to each other and their aspects will be the same everywhere. So we have this eclipse at 23 degrees of Sagittarius, about to conjoin Mercury, which has to do with our ideas. Mercury is on the south node, so it is in its detriment in Sagittarius on the south node, ready to be cleansed of some stories that we've been holding on to. Mercury rules our north node, and so the ruler of the north node transiting the south during a south node eclipse, it's really like when we change how we view the past, when we change how we look at the past, then we can set ourselves free. Obviously, one way to do that is to completely renounce it and never look at it, which will give us a future which wanders aimlessly. So look at it in order to see what needs to come with us into the future. Mercury is also in a trine with Mars, so there might be this impulse to do something very quickly, but that is probably not the right moment because it is an eclipse and we need to wait and see how the chips fall. Obviously, that's not always possible. In some cases, there are instances where you have to act right away. And so you can do them, just try to kind of take small actions, knowing that we don't always know exactly what we're doing during an eclipse. It's also in a separating square to Neptune, so that can kind of add to the confusion a little bit moving forward. I think that is all that I have to say about the Sagittarius solar eclipse. I hope that it is I hope that the darkness of that eclipse is illuminating for you. I have some exciting things coming up for the new year. I'm going to teach a class for some weeks in the new year, which I will post a description of. So that's fun coming up. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. If you want to see more of this stuff, you can go to my website and sign up for my newsletter if you like, more concise write-ups. And you can also follow me on social media. I hope you are having a cozy December. And I wish you all the best with the changing tides coming forward. Thank you so much for being here.